Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story talking about the Supreme Court in a case they will be taking up about whistleblower protections. And, of course, we will end today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. Now, that's enough rambling from me. Let's jump into our daily debate. So, was Edward Snowden, was he justified in what he did? Let's be clear, this case does not pertain to Edward Snowden, but I want to know what your opinions are. He is one of the most famous whistleblowers of our time. Was he right to do what he did? Should he be punished? Should he get some sort of pardon during the Trump time, even under the Biden times? What about Julian Assange? All these famous whistleblowers, not all the other ones like Chelsea Manning and so on and so forth. What is your opinion? Throw it down there in the comment section. This one is I honestly think this varies by age. I think a lot of older people have bought into the idea that they're leaking national security secrets, and younger people understand that, or at least believe that some of the things that they were fighting for, the ideals that they were trying to protect, or at least they claim to be protecting, were something that hits in the heartstrings of younger people. So I want to know, throw your comments down there. If you have a age that you're willing to talk about, I know it's kind of weird for some people, but throw it down in the comment section, because I want to see if there is a large disparate change between the age groups. So with that said, let's jump into our article that comes from the Washington Times. The headline reads, "Watch, Trump asks Supreme Court to take up issue over firing of whistleblower agency leader." And in order to really give you the context on this one, I'm going to actually read the first three paragraphs, and then we can talk from there. Quote, "The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court to halt a lower court order reinstating the leader of a whistleblower protection agency over the weekend that President Trump had fired in his attempt to cut the size of the federal government. According to a file shared with some press from the Justice Department, the government wants the justices to halt a lower court order reinstating Hampton Dillinger to lead the Office of Special Counsel. Mr. Dillinger had sued after being terminated without cause, arguing he could only be fired for poor performance. Mr. Dillinger is a Biden appointee, according to the NBC News, which also reported that Mr. Trump's Justice Department asked the High Court to keep him off his post while the case works its way through the courts. And this is something where we have to really step back here. What is the idea? What is the ideal, honestly, the ideal version of stripping the government of its power, of limiting government size? Is it haplessly firing people because you don't necessarily agree with them? Or is it ensuring that you maintain a population that is working within your offices in the government that is highly effective? I agree that we need to trim the fat in government, but you can't just haplessly trim fat. Now, for ideological reasons, I understand there's a different point of view here, but you can't just haplessly trim fat because you don't like people. You need people that are effective. Now, do you have to have everybody align with your political ideology? Not necessarily, though. It seems that when people disagree with whoever is in charge, they drag their feet a little bit. And if it's an executive agency like the Justice Department and it's meant to implement the ideas and policy of the president, dragging your feet is actually, it's not treasonous, because to say that treason comes with a very high bar. So it's not that, but it has those undertones. It has the idea that I am actively working against, or at least not aiding, the country's will, the president that has been put into power in order to actually implement his vision. And I can see how you can make a strong argument on that basis of getting rid of people who do not agree with you ideologically. But if you can mend this, if you can find a middle ground, and I know middle ground is not always tenable, but if you can find a place where people who are effective at their jobs and are willing to implement the personal agenda of the president, or the political agenda of the president, without necessarily having to get bogged down in their own personal biases, that is the happy middle ground. Will we ever be able to find it? Well, is there such a thing? I don't necessarily know. I think it's a little naive to sit there and say, oh yes, of course we can just find people who are not going to drag their feet and they're going to do their absolute best even if they disagree with the policy. No, I don't think that's the case. But if we want government to run efficiently, we need people who are willing to implement the agenda of either person to basically be effective boot. I don't want to say soldiers on the ground, the boots on the ground effectively, because that implies that they have no mind whatsoever. But they need to at least be very effective at getting their job done, push back when things are unconstitutional, because at the end of the day, they do serve at the pleasure of the president, but they also serve the U.S. Constitution, and they don't necessarily serve the people of America because they're not directly elected, but they serve the ideals of America and the ideal government form. So if there are things that are outside the bounds of the Constitution, they should be able to recuse themselves, be able to push back, be able to not have to worry about losing their job simply for trying to hem in somebody for doing something that is not within the purview of their power. And that is where the idea of whistleblowing comes back up, because the whistleblowers, they serve something higher. At least a lot of them believe that they do. Some people are out for their own gain, which is fair enough. But a lot of the language that normally people go to when it comes to protecting whistleblowers and vying for them and making arguments for them is that they are serving a larger purpose. They are serving the privacy rights of the people. They are serving to expose information that is being hidden from the population. They are meant to serve the broader population rather than enable the government to continue on its current path. Now, whether you actually believe that argument or not, or you fully agree with it, we have to at least analyze it. We can't pretend that it is not one that is valid, because to pretend as though that argument is not valid would also make the argument I made previously completely invalid. That, oh, we have people who are foot soldiers for the president, but they're able to push back and make sure everything's within the bounds of the Constitution. They believe that they are serving a higher purpose. And to pretend as though that whistleblowers can't do that exact same thing, just in a different way, I think would be a little bit dishonest, and it would honestly demean it would lower the standard of the conversation that we are having when it comes to the ones that need to be had about trying to push back within the system and without, in order to hem in any sort of illegal activity or morally outrageous activity, so on and so forth. But let's continue on to the rest of the article here. Quote, in the court filing, the Trump Justice Department tells the Supreme Court that lower courts are attempting to interfere with the executive branch's authority. Quote, the United States now seeks this court's intervention because 3 judicial rulings irreparably harm the presidency by curtailing the president's ability to manage the executive branch in the earliest days of his administration. The request, which was signed by the acting Solicitor General Sarah M. Harris, read according to NBC News. This case is not expected to receive action from the justices until after President's Day, according to the Associated Press. Well, guess what? Hey, now we are after President's Day, so maybe you'll start to see this unravel a little bit more. You'll see some more details come out. Quote, it is the first in what is expected to be many requests from the Trump administration to the Supreme Court over district court judges attempting to block the president's agenda. And this is one part of the Trump problem dealing with this government as it is. This is a man who is not liked by many in the population, and a lot of people believe, rightly or wrongly, that his actions are not within the bounds of the Constitution. And just like a whistleblower going out there and deciding whether or not they should report this information to the American public, these judges are going back and forth saying, should I push back on this? Is this the right place to do it? And while there's been some argument about a judge at the circuit level or local, not necessarily local level, but these lower courts being able to hold up an order that's supposed to be implemented nationally, there's supposed to be pushback against that. While I understand that that's frustrating and that it shouldn't necessarily be the case that circuit courts can uphold everything on a national level, I also am not going to sit here and use that argument to dismiss the fact that these people believe they are doing something right, even if they're wrong in doing it, even if a whistleblower like Julian Assange is wrong in doing it, and Snowden is wrong for releasing the information he did because maybe it opened up vulnerabilities in the government. Maybe it provides a pathway for people to do it in the future, because if he gets forgiven, then other people believe that they can just leak national security secrets. I understand a lot of the arguments, not necessarily all of them, but I understand a lot of the arguments. But those people believe that they were serving a higher purpose, and the judges believe that they're serving a higher purpose. Does that make their actions valid? No, but it does force us, and some people would disagree with me. I believe that it forces us to actually evaluate whether or not the case is noble or the case is legitimate. I think in Edward Snowden's case, I understand why the federal government wants to lock him up and make sure that he doesn't get allowed out and he gets out of Russia anytime. They want to make sure that he gets back from Russia and they can lock him up. I think what he did was right. I think that exposing national security secrets in general is wrong, but I also believe that the government was the one really in the wrong here and that somebody needed to expose it. And have we done anything about it? No. But the reason they don't want Snowden back in the open, they don't want him pardoned, is because he can continue to bring this up and he can continue to push this issue home. But hey, that's enough about whistleblowers, about the current Trump situation, whether or not he's actually going to get this particular whistleblower, Hampton Dillinger, to not be brought back into the Justice Department. If you want to read this article, it will be linked in the description below, like and subscribe button. I actually read almost all of it. It is very short, but there are updates that are rolling on the side of the page. So if you want to come back here, get up-to-date stuff. But before you leave, we're going to do our daily delight. And that is a story, like I said, meant to leave you feeling positive. This one comes from outdoors.com. And the headline reads something to the effect of, excuse me, viral photos show adorable enchiladas in the snow. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's kind of, it looks like a porcupine, but with an anteater nose, kind of. I don't know how to pronounce it, but honestly, this guy playing around in the snow, absolutely adorable. If you want to brighten up your day, go to outdoors.com. They have, we've referenced their articles here before as well. They have good stuff. So if you want to leave with a smile on your face, that's probably the way to do it this morning. So, like I said, all the articles in the description below the like and subscribe button. Also down there, if you want to follow the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, the links are there. You can download it, listen to it on the go, that sort of thing. Also, if you want to listen to 6 and 6, which is our international stories that come out on Tuesday and Thursday, it's 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. Really consumable, really easy, meant to inform you outside of U.S. politics. And if you want more U.S. politics, come back Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if you've already made it this far, I'm assuming that you're a normal listener, so I appreciate it. But with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.